Okay, here's the next version of that same YouTube video. Okay, here's the next version of that
I
first
forgot
YouTube
about
video.
that. Yeah, that's what you did. Oh my God. That just like unlocked a memory that I completely forgot about. Yes. All right. So let's take it a step back because, like I mentioned, you were once a one-on-one client of mine. And, I think honestly, you were maybe one of my first like five or first six or something like that.
No,
And
I know. I was
yeah,
I was number five,
were you
and
number five?
I was number five. I was the last person at the first
Oh,
investment rate.
yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay.
I remember because at
Yeah.
the time it was like a huge amount to invest, and I was like, "Oh my God, she's already raised her prices," and I was the last person at that rate.
Yeah, I think my rates were like 2000, then 2500, then 3, then 4, and then I think by the time I was booked out, I think it was at 5, I think. And I
Yes.
remember you being like, "Oh my gosh, I got in at the right time because I think I raised my prices once I accepted you because I was like,
Yep.
hey, this is my fifth client at this price point. I think I'm ready to like at least add another 500 because I was at the place where I was getting booked out. So that's so funny that you actually remember that you were client number 5 at the specific rate that you locked it down for because I don't do one-on-one anymore. I haven't done one-on-one in a long time. Um, and
Right?
so looking back, I really want to dissect our one-on-one relationship together because that's kind of the theme of this call is to have an honest conversation of maybe the mistakes that I made with you specifically and other of my clients as well. I think it's a healthy thing to admit, hey, I could have done that better, I could have done this better because as you grow, you get more knowledgeable. As you work with more coaches, you also learn more things. And then also for you, you've also mentioned that on the client side, some mistakes that you also acknowledge that you've made that maybe at the time you didn't think was a mistake, but now that you look back and now that you actually have worked with other clients, you can see the things that you might have done as well. And so I want to talk about my mistakes that I made when I worked one on one, specifically with you. But a lot of these mistakes also are very common in maybe the first 5 clients that I worked with. But with you specifically, I remember I had so much imposter syndrome when you signed on. And when we actually had our sales call, I don't even think I told you. I was like really close to actually not accepting you as a client because I was scared. Because I was like, she's much older than me. She's already been a coach and I don't know. And I know that like Instagram and social media was something that was also quite foreign to you. So I didn't really know what knowledge level that you were at, but something in me was like, you know what? Like the fact that she reached out and she wants help from me says something. And so I accepted you as a client and I'm really glad I did because if I had not accepted you as a client, I think it would have been for the total wrong reasons. It would have been nothing about you and it would have been more of me being scared that someone who's much older than I am, who's much more experienced than I am, because I remember the moment you said, yeah, I've worked with a lot of students as a coach, blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh my God, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. I started getting scared. So I accepted you as a client. Now, that was one thing that is a good preface for those listeners to hear that I had a lot of imposter syndrome because that also dictated how I acted with you. So, one of them was I answered you basically anytime, anywhere, no matter what. And I did that to a lot of my clients, but I did that to you even more because of that imposter syndrome. I didn't want you to feel like I was an incompetent coach, even though responding to a client has nothing to do with your coaching abilities. How fast or slow you respond to a client has nothing to do with whether or not you're a good coach. It can say something about customer service and setting expectations, but it's not the same thing. And I thought that those two were the same thing. So, mistake number one, I answered you anytime, anywhere, no matter what. And that enabled a lot of behaviors from you, which we'll talk about later as well. The second thing that I distinctly remember is I remember I was helping you with launching your sales page and launching your website. And you had so many tech struggles of figuring out WordPress and using Elementor and all that because you were essentially trying to replicate how I set up my sales page. And I had told you, this is really tech heavy. You might benefit from like a more plug and play, easier setup. But you're like, no, I want to do it like this. So great. But I remember there was a distinctive moment in our coaching relationship where I asked you for your password so that I could do it for you. So I could log into your WordPress and do the dang sales page and edit it for you. So I literally became like a little sales page editor. And looking back, I knew that you were very appreciative of it. You were floored by the customer service that I gave. And I wouldn't have changed it, honestly. Like, I'm really happy that I was able to help you. But now looking back, I'm like, probably should have coached you and sent you Loom videos and kind of sent you tutorials so that you could do it yourself instead of going into rescue mode. That's kind of what I did a lot when I was working with my first few clients is I was really trying to rescue my clients and trying to handhold them because I wanted them to succeed, especially if it was under my watch, let's say. Another mistake that I made, and it's so interesting, like just admitting mistakes to a past client, this is weird for me, but I'm really glad we're having this conversation, is looking back, I taught a lot on our calls. Like I would, like a call that's meant to be an hour was like 3 hours or like 2 hours because the first 30, 45 minutes was me sharing my screen and showing you how to optimize your YouTube videos, how to upload things on Instagram, sharing all that stuff. And back then, I didn't think of pre-recording that. I didn't think of structuring my coaching program so that there would be a curriculum that kind of supported you. Everything that you needed to know was based off of the one-on-one calls. And there was no structure or curriculum to really support you other than some resources that I would drop here and there, but it would be only after our call. There was no prep work from you. And so that was one mistake, a huge mistake that I made with a lot of my clients is I taught things on the call. And now in Boss Graham Academy, I teach my students to not do the same mistake that I did and actually have a supporting curriculum on top of the one-on-one calls so that your one-on-one calls are really focused on coaching and supporting instead of teaching. And again, a lot of this came from my imposter syndrome of specifically working with you because I was like, oh my gosh, I want her to know that I know things. I want to impress her because she's just so much more knowledgeable and all of that. So those were the mistakes that I made. What were some mistakes that you made, Fiona?
That was pretty fascinating to listen to, really getting it from your perspective. And some of those things I knew because you've shared them on Instagram as a former client and I recognize myself, or we've talked about it. But it's yeah, it's really interesting. And it's fascinating to think about you having imposter syndrome because we all have it, but we don't necessarily think that the people we admire have it. We just look up to them so much. All right. So the mistakes that I made, I'm going to be as transparent as you were, being afraid to take action and being afraid in general. So I think that the biggest mistake that I made was like wanting to latch on to you. Somehow I knew like it was sort of a combination of like not knowing that this was going to be the first investment of many future investments. Like to me, that $2,000 investment was huge. Although over time, I had at that point already invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into myself as a singer and performer. I had never invested in business. And I think this is actually one of the things that performing artists, that one of the huge mistakes that we make in general is like we're throwing money at becoming better artists. We never put the money towards actually learning how to run a business. Regardless, it felt like a very big investment to me at the time. And I was scared that I was going to lose you and that once it was over and that I needed it to stretch, like I needed to stretch the time to maximize my time with you and having you there to explain things on the program. And so I spread out our sessions because it was like the program was 8 sessions for the $2,000 and it was supposed to be, I think you imagined they would be like every other week or so. And we were supposed to book them. But I wanted you there with me while I implemented, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to implement everything in that 2-month time frame. So this was not like this wasn't calculated and strategic, like how can I spread this out? It was more like driven by fear and anxiety about being on my own and taking action. And
Right.
so definitely the biggest mistake was just like spreading it out instead of diving in, taking the action, knowing that I was, this was the time we had together. You were going to teach me everything you could in the time allotted. And at the end of that time, maybe, I didn't know at that point what would happen with your skyrocketing business. But for all I knew, I could have continued working with you after that first, period had been done. But it was like I was afraid of spending the money, I was afraid of not being able to work with you. I was very there was just a lot of fear. So that was big mistake. And then part of what was holding me back from taking action had to do with wanting to get things perfect.
Yes,
So
I
I
remember
wanted to
that.
get it perfect. And instead of iterating and improving as I went, I was like, here, Vanessa, look at my YouTube video, my first one. Let me get your feedback. Okay, here's the next version of that same YouTube video. Okay, here's the next version of that
I
first
forgot
YouTube
about that.
video.
Yeah, that's what you did. Oh my God. I forgot. That just like unlocked a memory that I completely forgot about. Yes. So to everyone listening, if Fiona wanted to do a video, she would send me like 2 to 3 drafts of that video. And then it took you so many renditions. And that time that you did those renditions, you could have literally posted 3 videos.
Right.
I forgot about that. Oh, I remember that. Like I reviewed all of your videos too, now that I think about it. That's wow, thanks for bringing that up. I completely forgot about that.
Yeah.
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 Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm glad it's so funny that how we're having this conversation and unlocking a lot of memories. But I also want to mention that a few other mistakes that now that you bring it up is I didn't set any boundaries with my clients, and I also didn't set times on when we would meet. Every time I'd be like, here's my Calendly link, book whenever you're ready. And so that enabled you to be able to drag an 8 session program into like a 24 session program because there was no boundary. Or what I mean to say is a 2 month program into a 6 month program, not
Exactly.
24 sessions. So
Yeah.
instead of us meeting recurringly every other week, like a set schedule, and this is kind of what I teach my students now in BGA is like, hey, when you have a client, make sure that when you're doing client management, that you say, hey, Fiona, I'm meeting you every Thursday at 2 p.m. or every second Thursday at 2 p.m. That's your slot. So that way you have to show up. And if you don't show up, you have to give me a reason why kind of thing. And then that way we're able to really control that a little bit better and actually see, okay, well, these are the sessions that we have. And so if you need extra, then here's the package for more sessions or whatever else. Or also explaining to a client that, in order for us to meet regularly, that allows you to gain momentum. And so if a client's not
Right.
booking you consistently, it's easier for them to lose momentum. And so each session after that just becomes a catch up and it's just not really going anywhere. We're kind of repeating the same things. And so that's one thing that I made a mistake on, which enabled you to be able to drag on our sessions for longer than, I had anticipated or that even you had anticipated.
Yeah, and I think what's also really important for people to understand is that that really didn't serve me.
Hmm.
And I totally get that now. And it was particularly about momentum, like you said, that I would have had a lot more momentum. I would have moved faster in my business
Hmm.
if I hadn't dragged it out. And yeah, we co-created that and we both learned from it,
Yes.
but it was definitely a mistake and I learned from it with my own clients as well.
Absolutely. And even the whole thing that we were laughing about, just me reviewing your YouTube videos, reviewing your keywords, reviewing everything. It seemed like I was more of maybe like a freelancer, consultant, or something like that instead of an actual coach. The fact that I accepted doing that type of work likely also enabled Fiona to think that it was okay because I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll do that. And so for other videos, she did the same because I didn't put my foot down and say, hey, Fiona, I think that this video is great. I would love to challenge you to ask yourself what could be improved with this video. What do you think about it? Instead of giving her a whole Google document with all of my notes, all the timestamps, what I think, giving her the entire keyword stuff, giving her feedback and all of that stuff. Like feedback is one thing, but doing it for your client is another. And so you won't be able to really learn how to do it yourself. And it took you a while to learn that. And I think that some of your biggest growth points too was after we stopped working together, because you had to force yourself essentially to figure things out without me hand holding you the entire way through or waiting for my permission for you to move forward. I also remember, that you mentioned that whole thing of you wanting to perfect things. I remember you were also the type of client where you would read so many books, you would read so many things, do so much research before you could even book a call with me, because you felt like you needed to have everything ready. And so I think that's also one thing to mention, because we have coaches and clients listening to this episode. And I think it's so important to mention these different things that happen that are very common in the early stages when you're running your one-on-one coaching business, both on the client side and on the coach side.
Agreed.
Yeah. And do you think that there are any other possible mistakes that you've made, or mistakes that you find that your clients are making with you right now that you're seeing can actually impact the coaching relationship? Because one thing, a lot of the things that happened, it happened because of good intentions. We both thought we were doing the right thing. We both thought we were helping each other. And I especially thought that I was helping you by literally holding your hand. But even you mentioned, and I also know, it doesn't serve you at all. Instead, it handicapped you. It disabled you from actually taking action for yourself and building that intuitive muscle. I robbed you of that during our one-on-one time together, because I just wanted to do everything for you, because I had my own stuff that I was projecting, which was my imposter syndrome. And I was a rookie coach, and I thought that literally my sole focus was, I need to get Fiona results. And the work that she's giving me now could be improved. So I'm just going to improve it for her so she can get results faster. That's what I thought, which is not the right way to go.
Wow. I did just think of an example from my own coaching, a mistake that I made that kind of follows this same line, and that is discounting your price. So with one of my early clients, and actually more than one if I'm honest, I discounted my rate because it wasn't about imposter syndrome. It was really about doing a favor. It was about how much I cared about the client. It was about thinking that it was really supportive of the client. But the problem is that models for them that they should then discount their prices. And that's not the message that I want to be giving to my clients. I want my clients to feel like they are deserving and they are worthy of charging their full rate. And if I'm giving them a discount of my full rate and they know it, then what's to stop them from thinking that that's what you do when you like someone?
Right. So you were giving discounts just to make the sale, essentially.
No, it wasn't to make the sale. It was because I was overgiving. It was because I was equating. It's a little bit hard to exactly explain, but it was like I'm equating like wanting to be liked, wanting to let them know how much I liked and cared for them.
Ah, I see.
With a
So the
discount.
special treatment type of thing.
Yes. It's like, I care about you so much. I like you so much. And I know that your life is challenging, so I'm going to give you a discount. But it wasn't really a like need-based discount. It was, or like some kind of hardship where it was like a really well thought out scholarship. It was more like, I really want you to know how much I care about you, and therefore I'm going to discount my services. But then when I think about clients that I did that with, they then manifested challenges in their own ability to charge their full rate.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Mic drop. I love that you mentioned that, because a lot of times your clients are modeling what you do. And so for me, if you saw that I was hand holding you, if you saw that I didn't, the way that I ran things, which is, to be honest, how I also was experiencing when I worked with my first one-on-one coach, it kind of becomes that ripple effect of modeling, not, I wouldn't say bad behavior, but behavior that's not fully optimized for a positive coaching experience. And at the end of the day, we had a really great experience. You had got amazing results. It all worked out. I just want to clarify that I wasn't
Yes.
terrible, okay? I wasn't terrible. Fiona wasn't a nightmare client. I just want to clarify to those people who are listening. But I want to make this episode because it's such a it's probably one of the most transparent episodes we'll ever have on the podcast, of us just really admitting, dang, I could have done this better. You could have done this better. And let's make sure we have this episode so other people can do better too. But I love, yeah, go ahead.
I want to say on top of that, it's like, yeah, it's kind of like the perfectionism, right? Yeah, we could have done better, but we did damn good.
Yeah, we did pretty good. You got great results, okay? So I'm happy about that. But I love that you brought up just the fact that it wasn't doing your clients a service, and also the fact that they had their own pricing struggles because they saw how you were acting when you were literally, giving them benefits and discounting things off of them. And the interesting thing is, as I'm hearing this, right, it's kind of ironic, or yeah, a little bit ironic, is like, hey, if you really want to spice things up for someone, and if you really want to show someone you care, wouldn't you give them maybe a bonus or something else other than taking away or discounting, right? It's kind of interesting. Like, you wanted to give more, but instead of giving more, you discounted, instead of actually just adding in an extra bonus. Like, hey, I really like you, so let me just add in this PDF that I have, or let me add in this, which would increase the value of what they're actually getting, that perceived value.
I think that's a great point, and I love the way that you put that. It's like, wouldn't you just give more rather than taking away?
Yeah, because now it's sending a message that, hey, this service actually isn't worth that much, so let me just take it off because I'm probably overcharging you or whatever. Like, it doesn't have to be that way, but that's one way that you could potentially see it as, if you're just giving discounts with good intentions. But what message does that energetically send? Versus, did you like what you just learned? Well, the full 54-minute episode is available on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere podcasts are being played. Just simply search for episode number 32, Interview with an Ex-One-on-One Client, and Mistakes That I Made as a One-on-One Coach. If you like this episode, or if you like the podcast, make sure you leave a review over on iTunes and share this episode with your friends on social media. Just don't forget to tag me at vanessalau.co. As always, boss, keep doing the damn thing and keep building a business you don't need an escape from. I'll see you in the next episode.